Hey folks, this won't be a long video. I just wanted to explain the events that took place last night and today and show you just how some of the methods they use to set people up and to entrap people, the targets. You know, that's how they entrap us. Um, and what I mean is the perpetrators use this to entrap the targets. So last night there was pounding on the ceiling, on our ceiling, their floor, and it was very faint, it was very quiet, almost in the background. It was more like a tap, tap, tapping all night long. And they'll do this sometimes, and sometimes they'll wake me up to it, or they'll wake my mother up to it. Um, it's almost constant. It stops and starts, but it's a daily thing now. Um, I literally had to look for my old voice recorder because the cell phone is just not going to pick up that faint tapping. So now I've got my old voice recorder, and it should pick it up, and hopefully I'll be able to work that into a video, just the sound of that, just to show you what that's like. It's almost constant now. Anyway, so today, this morning I was already provoked. I didn't get a lot of sleep. I was exhausted. I had to go out. I took a cab to the location because normally I would take public transportation everywhere. I used to. I just can't do it anymore. I did take public transportation home though. Anyway, so it was on the way back. It wasn't even on the way back. It was as soon as I got off the bus on the way home. When I got home, that really things really started. There was a guy who was standing there, and he kind of glared at me as I got off the bus, and he was mimicking my gestures from last night. Now, I'm not a big gum chewer, but maybe once or twice a month I will have a piece of gum. And last night I did, and every time I do that, they have people, usually white guys, walking around, mimicking the way I chew, what I was chewing, the very gum that I took, just, holding it in their hand, putting it in their mouth, every single time. Okay, so anyway, I passed him, and as I was walking, he just stared me down. He didn't take his eyes off me. Eventually I looked back, and he had turned around for like maybe a few seconds, and then he turned back to watch me. I had to stop at a little store, a convenience store right by the building before I went home. And another guy who tends to follow me around cut me off there and walked in front of me. He does that a lot. I leave, he's there. I come back, he's there. Okay, so I leave the store, and as I'm walking toward the building, another man who works here, he took out his phone and he picked it up and flashed the camera at me. Now I can't say anything because if I say something, he'll deny it, and you know what happens then. I don't need to be called mentally ill, and I'm afraid they are doing this in the building. I'm not going to say what the building is for obvious reasons, but there have been people in the building who have complained about certain things going on here, and shortly after they complained, someone from the building decided to have them uh, decided to suggest that maybe they were mentally ill, and to red flag them, so to speak, to have them written up and sent to a psychiatrist. I'm not kidding. So we have to be very careful. Anyway, so that happened, um, and that's the least of it. I didn't say what happened earlier this morning before I left. So what happened was there was a lot of pounding. There was a lot of pounding, and oh no, I'm sorry. This happened. This didn't. See, I'm so gone. Even time. I keep saying time means nothing to me. This didn't happen in the morning before I left. This happened after I got back. So there was a lot of pounding again. And first there was the tap, tap, tapping on the ceiling. Keep in mind, we're talking two different locations. Tap, tap, tapping on the ceiling. And then there was pounding on the wall next door. Now this happened before. This has happened a few times. It happened once right after I got back from the hospital, and they were just pounding from all locations next door, the ceiling. And when I finally got angry and shouted, they did it harder, and they started just banging the walls so hard it sounded like the walls were going to cave in. That's how bad it was. And I didn't start recording until after that when they toned it down a little, but they kept on pounding. So this time they were doing the same thing. It's like surround pound is what it is, that they're pounding from all areas and all locations. So they had been pounding all night on the ceiling. They were more like tapping. And then later today that started again with the tapping on the ceiling, and then they started pounding next door. And I couldn't deal with it anymore. I started shouting, shut the F up, and on and on. Two people then came and knocked at our door. Lovely. It was a man and an older woman. And they started explaining how they were putting up pictures and yada yada, and they seemed nice. The woman invited me over to come look at her pictures, so I went and I stayed kind of in between both of them just so that they couldn't accuse me of anything while I was there. And we talked for a little bit, and then I brought them back out into the hallway and I handed them a couple of flyers that I tend to hand out to people because I wanted them to know what was going on. And I explained to them what was going on, that there had been a lot of pounding and it's been constant for months now, and that this morning it was happening. And I thought that they were just part of that. I didn't know that they were not. And and honestly, I still don't know. The guy was younger. They could be part of it. This could just be another setup. Or the woman could be innocent. Who knows? They could have just been continuously pounding and pounding and pounding, and then sent someone over to hang her pictures, which required an intensification of that pounding to the point where it was very loud, which would finally set me off because it was increasing. That's why it set me off. And then, of course, I got angry at her, and I don't know whether she's a perpetrator or not, and I never can know. Anyway, they seemed nice. They seemed nice, so we talked, and hopefully they are innocent and they're not working for these monsters. I did apologize for shouting, just in case that they're not perpetrators. Anyway, that's part of it. We get sensitized to a certain action, a certain thing, to the point where when someone else does it, then we don't know whether or not they're perpetrators or just innocent people, right? And especially if it's something that is used against us aggressively, like in the last apartment we lived in, there was constant drilling. We're talking for years on end, and at one point it was so loud in our apartment, and it wasn't coming from our apartment, obviously, but it was so loud in our apartment that someone actually came to our apartment and asked us what we were doing. That's how loud it was in our apartment. Well, they can't get away with all of that here, so they do it more subtly. Or they'll have someone come and pound on our door and then run off, right? Knock on our door, then run off. Sometimes just slam on our door and pound hard and then run off. Once I caught the woman and she said, "Oh, sorry, it was a mistake, the wrong apartment." Same thing that they did at the old apartment, right? And what can I do? I can't prove that she's lying. She works here. Anyway, so after all of this, I went up to the laundry room to do laundry. Now, here's a bit of a backstory. A while back, I had been reading a book at home. I'm not going to give the name of the book. So I had been reading a book at home, and I went up to the laundry room, and there was a woman there. I'd never seen her before. I had just met her that night. She came in, she introduced herself giving the same name as the author who wrote the book. Then she starts bringing up points that were in the book. Then she started saying a state. I'm not going to give the location of the state's name, but she started saying the state's name over and over and over again. Now, that's the name of the state, just also happened to be the last name of a man who was one of the villains in the book. So she kept doing that in the middle of an incredibly friendly conversation. Then she started repeating things to me that my mother had said. So it was, you know how that goes. Anyway, I'd seen her a few times after that. Once I was downstairs and she was sitting there texting something, and she's an older woman, and she asked me to give her a hug, and then she looked at the text she got, asked me to give her a hug, and then and then she got up with her arms stretched open, and there were people around, and I felt bad, so I gave her the hug. She seems like a nice lady, right? I've seen her before with a younger guy. I don't know if he's her grandson or not, but anyway. So a few days ago, I was in the laundry. A lot's happened, but a few days ago, since then, this was a while back. Anyway, so a few days ago, I was in the laundry room. I saw her again, and she came in and she asked me to take her picture with her cell phone. Now, can I just say no? Maybe I should have. I don't know. But I'm going over and over again in my mind all of the things that she could, all of the ways she can use that against me, or that can be used against me. But in the end, I did it. She asked me to do it, and I did it. And she thanked me for it. And then before she left, she mentioned something that my mother had said in private, as always, and she didn't say, "Hey, this is what your mom said." No, instead, she brought it up in the context of a conversation, pretty much word for word, and it's a topic that my mother was talking about. It's something that my mother is interested in. Okay, fast forward. I saw her again in the laundry room today. So after the pounding incident with the two people, I went up to do some laundry. I needed a break from this apartment. So I saw her there again, And she walked in and she wanted to hand me a letter, and she asked me to give this to someone in a store downstairs right by the building, right? There's a hallway, and then there are some shops. Not really shops, but there's a hair salon, and there's there are some things there. Uh, it's by the building. So she asked me to do that, and I'm thinking, okay, how this can go very, very wrong, right? But again, she's old. She's an old woman, and she didn't want to go down and do it herself. She said it was a thank you letter for something the person did, and she sealed it up. And against my better judgment, I said okay. And she said that, well, if they're not there, I can slip it under the door, right? So I did. After I was done with the laundry, I came and put it back, and then I went to take it downstairs, and you know, worst case scenario. If they were there, I could have given it to them. If they weren't there, I could have slipped it under the door. Well, the person I was supposed to give it to was probably there. The lights were off, but there was a television on in the back and a purse sitting out open in the front, on the desk, not right by the door, but in the front. I started to walk in, but when I saw that, I walked back out. I'm not going in there. So I barely crossed the entrance, and then I walked right back out. There were two people there were two people sitting by the side in the hallway. And I asked them if the person was there, and they said that they thought she left, but that I could shout in, she might still be there, right? Or they said I could just go in, just go in. And I said I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to go in. No, I'm not going to do that. So I waited for a few minutes, and then finally I shouted back, not really loudly and not in a mean way, but I hollered back for the person, and I heard some muffled voice say something. I don't know what it was, and no one came out. I waited like a minute, and then I said, the person's name again, and I said, hey, so and so wanted me to give you this letter. And then she came out, and I handed it to her. Here's the thing, and this is what they will do to try to set you up. If I had walked in there, it would have been another setup instantly, okay? You've got to be careful, and you've got to, if you can't just say no outright, or if you feel bad saying no outright, just find a way around it, okay? Because they're good. They try to set people up. How many times I've had security called on me, and I don't know what I did. Someone will walk in, whisper something, and security will be called on me at a store, or I never know what I'm being accused of. So we've got to be careful. And another time too. Well, I'm not going to go into anything else right here, because this was just about today's events. I just wanted to share that. Again, another word of caution to targets: be careful. Don't allow yourself to be set up. I know that sounds stupid, right? Don't allow yourself to be. If they try to find a way out of it or a way around it, they will try to get you into situations where they can entrap you or falsely accuse you of things. So be careful. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. Y'all have a good evening.